Good morning. My name is Dr. Matt Moynihan, and I'm happy that you've taken some time out of your busy day to learn about this important topic. I've been in this space about 15 years. I have a PhD in this. I was a senior nuclear engineer for the Navy. I hosted a podcast, and I'm writing a book for Nature Springer, a popular science book on nuclear fusion. And in 2018, I founded a private consulting group which helps investors understand the $2.5 billion private fusion space. So if anybody has any questions about what I do, please talk to me, reach out to me after the talk. I love taking questions from anyone who's interested. This is an important topic, and the comparison that I'll make is with hypersonics, which have been around for about a decade now. It's arguably true that the United States is playing catch-up on hypersonic vehicles, which are sort of the next wave of technology, with Russia and China leading the way. In fact, this picture in the back is a Russian hypersonic weapon system. We can't play catch-up on fusion rockets. And technology is way too important. As Derek mentioned, it's the type of reactor device that would enable multi-planet habitation and multi-world planetation. So it's the next leap in space technology, and the United States absolutely has to lead on this for military and economic reasons and also cultural reasons. So that's the main message I would give to anybody considering funding this program. So I'm going to go through what is a fusion rocket. I want to get the conception of a fusion rocket in your head so you understand what it is, why we think this is near term, and just to preview that, there's been steady advances in plasma science, in simulation and modeling, and also superconductivity is having a big impact on fusion generally and fusion rockets specifically. And at the same time, there's also private money going into fusion, and the two are inexorably linked. So advances in private fusion will also be an advance in fusion rockets. I'm going to walk through four different rocket designs that are near and dear to my heart. I'm going to give a few comments on what I think a national program would look like, and then I'm going to provide a summary conclusion. So what are fusion rockets? Well, they are different. They have different designs, but there's some general similarities, enough that I can describe the basic conception of it. Imagine a fusing plasma at a point. Material is shooting out from the center of that plasma at a percent of the speed of light, like 2 or 3% of the speed of light. That material hits the cone of a rocket exhaust plume and then is shot out in one direction as an exit exhaust. As the material leaves the ship, it imparts its momentum on the rocket itself, pushing it forward. That's the basic concept of a fusion rocket. The fusion event is happening in the exhaust plume at the back of the rocket. Plasma represents the jet of material shooting out the back. Now, there are some caveats here. Each design is different. One of the designs doesn't actually need fusion to occur. The Princeton reconnection rocket doesn't need that, and we're going to touch on that specifically when we get to that slide. But the bottom line is fusion rockets do represent the next great leap in America's space technology. So why now? Well, there is a confluence of technologies in this space that are making this near term. There's also private funding flowing into fusion broadly, and those two fields are inexorably linked. There's also been a steady, stable advance in plasma modeling and plasma science. These things are all coming together to make this near term. Now, I personally see the superconducting magnets as probably the biggest factor in play. And the reason for that is that the fusion rate scales as the magnetic field to the fourth power. So a tenfold or 20-fold increase in magnetic field strength would yield a massive increase in the fusion performance and ultimately thrust of the rocket itself. So as an example of this, on the right you see a picture of the 20 Tesla cold bore magnet built by Commonwealth Fusion Systems and MIT on 3 weeks ago. This is a huge example of what fusion is enabling and where magnets technology could go. In fact, the whole story in private fusion for the last 10 years has been the idea of taking these mind-bogglingly strong magnets and putting them into fusion reactor devices. And that's what Commonwealth and Tokamak Energy were both founded on. What would happen if we take those same magnets and put them in other fusion concepts, or moreover, advanced fusion rockets? We would see a huge change in what was possible. The private investment is another piece of this, because the private companies have developed plasma science that can be exploited in this field as well. Private companies can now create plasma structures, control them, stabilize them, move them, and get plasma in the right conditions for fusion rates to occur. So all of these pieces are basically sitting on the table, and the fusion rocket field would come along and pick all these pieces up and advance the field. So it's very exciting. So I'm going to tell a story about one of these designs, the Princeton field reverse configuration. It's a picture of the machine on the right. The technology started with a fellow named Sam Cohen, who was a designer on ITER in the mid-90s. Sam realized that ITER wasn't the direction he wanted to pursue with his career. So he returned to Princeton and decided to develop a field reverse configuration. Now, what is that? Plasma has this weird property that it's a fluid that can conduct electricity, which means that when you move it in a certain way, it will generate a magnetic field, which allows you the ability to structure it. So you can whip up plasma donuts. And that's what an FRC is. It's material moving in a circle, and it's manipulable. You can control it, merge it, grow it, stabilize it. And what's special about it also is that material inside it is hotter and denser, which makes it ideal for fusion reactions. So fast forward 15 years, and Dr. Cohen now had held a world record for the longest stable FRC ever created. Moreover, he's been working closely with a small business, Princeton Fusion Systems, that has won a series of NASA awards to take this academic research and turn it into a practical, realizable system. This team is well positioned because they have over 15 years of mature technology development behind them, and they also have the right mix of people, the right credibility and institutions to take this to the next level. And I haven't even mentioned that they haven't gone into what's possible if you add in those superconducting magnets, how much better this design could be with those better magnets. So this is an exciting design. I want to talk about another design, Dr. Yu and Dr. Stephane Lintner. Now, we're going to hear from them later in this talk, so I don't want to steal too much of their thunder. But both of them met in graduate school in Berkeley, California, and both decided then that after they went out and worked for a few years, they were going to come back and create their fusion rocket company. So Dr. Yu went out and had an excellent career in academia studying a phenomenon known as reconnection. Reconnection is a really interesting plasma phenomenon. What it is two magnetic fields merging to become one field. It's been studied in astrophysical plasmas for decades, and now about 36 sites around the world can routinely do this effect in laboratory settings. The upshot of reconnection is that it releases a ton of energy. That energy comes out of the magnetic field and is converted directly into heat and heats the plasma up to fusion conditions. So reconnection is a cheap, direct, simple way to get plasma hot enough to fuse. And a number of teams in the fusion community are currently using it for different applications. This company wants to use it for a rocket. Their concept is plasma jets ejected into a magnetic cone. They form a self-structure. Remember I mentioned the other slide that plasma can form its own structure. That structure passes through a magnetic nozzle, which compresses it to the conditions where reconnection would occur. That kicks the plasma up to fusion conditions. The plasma fuses and shoots out the back of the nozzle as exhaust. So it's a very promising combination of effects, and it's built around using this reconnection phenomenon to basically kickstart fusion plasma and create a powerful rocket. And I think it has a lot of good potential. This is a different approach, and it was developed at Princeton University. And it arose from research on the National Spherical Tokamak Experiment, NSTX, which we all are very appreciative that Congress has found the funding for year after year. Researchers at NSTX were watching the plasma, and they saw weird knots form in the material. They were actually little self-structured plasma rings, like I talked about in the previous slide. So they went off and modeled this effect and realized that the material was the fields were reconnecting and the plasma was forming its own little internal donut inside the NSTX because of the conditions in which the machine was running. So they had an insight. They realized that they could set up plasma in a certain condition to get this to happen naturally, and then eject it out the back of the ship as a rocket plume. So the Princeton team went off, did some simulations, did some modeling, and developed a design that allows you to throttle a rocket using the natural formation of these plasmoids as they eject out the back of the ship. And they're now seeking federal funding to take this to the next level. It's another exciting design that has a lot of potential. And the special thing about this one is they don't necessarily need fusion to occur to make it happen. It will work without fusion. So finally, this is Nearstar. They are a company out of Chantilly, Virginia that has been around for at least 15 years. And they've done a lot of great work with plasma cannons in collaboration with Los Alamos. The chief technology officer at this company developed this technology with a collaboration with the University of Huntsville. It's essentially passing material along a railgun and then inducing a pinch that squeezes the fusion fuel as it exits the back of the rocket. It fuses and then is ejected out the back. So it's an acceleration of material passing through a pinch that causes the fusion reactions to occur, and then the material comes out the back as a pinch. Another very interesting idea, and it has a lot of cross-play with other important technologies like railguns, superconducting magnets, and other things. Okay, gone over a lot of information just now. 4 different concepts, why I think this is near term, why it's important that the United States lead on this subject. So what would a national program look like? Well, I don't have a firm answer for that, but here's some thoughts. We can leverage a lot of things that we already have in place. We already have the necessary infrastructure for many of these pieces. The problem is that a lot of these resources are split between the different agencies because we've never had a fusion rocket program per se before. So I'll give you an example. The National Energy Research Computing Center is perfect for plasma modeling. They have the tools, the expertise to do large-scale prototyping of rockets before you ever build anything. But that's run under DOE. The Glenn Research Center has a large vacuum chamber that would be good for material testing, but that's run under NASA. The National High Magnetic Field Laboratory does excellent work in superconductivity and magnets, but that's run under the National Science Foundation. So developing a program, the first step is going to be finding ways to get these interagencies to work together and reorient resources that are already in existence around this larger technology roadmap. And this is an ongoing topic of discussion within this field, and we'd love to get some feedback from this crowd as to what this would look like. So in conclusion, fusion rockets are the next great leap in civilization's exploration of space. There is a convergence of technology that I mentioned, superconducting magnets, the growth from the private fusion industry, advances in plasma science, modeling and simulation tools. All of these things are coming together to make this near term. There are private companies in fusion. There are private companies in fusion rockets. The two will work together. The two will play off each other. We've got some excellent teams with great designs ready to go. And finally, there are tools out there, but they need to be reorganized and reallocated to this purpose. Make no mistake, this is a technical race, and the United States cannot afford to lose on this to a foreign power. And that's why we need to push this forward. Thank you.